All right, welcome everybody. This is Kevin Ring, president of FAM. We're back for another edition of our Heart to Heart series. And today we're going to be talking about getting involved in protesting the rotten prison conditions that we see from one end of the country to the other. We've mentioned this quite a few times that I've been a FAM 12 years and I have never seen the conditions as bad as they are now. And we're hearing from a lot of families and people inside just about how bad they are. Um, it's never great. And what people don't understand is people are not just complaining because they're in prison. They don't expect hotel accommodations. But right now we're seeing with the COVID and the resulting lockdowns, conditions that are just absolutely brutal and make it impossible for people to stay safe, to pass time, to program, to get through their stay. And it's causing a lot of anxiety and worry among their family members, as you can imagine. And so we've taken a number of actions to try to call attention to it. That's all we can do is, with your help, call attention to these situations. We've seen a lot of good press coverage about it. And in some cases, we're seeing politicians act, but not enough. And so we want to keep up the pressure. And we were glad to see that so many of you have been starting protests in your local area, at prisons in your vicinity, organizing with one another to bring attention. And we think that's the best thing. There's been talks about doing marches on Washington or things like that. Those types of events are just very difficult logistically and financially in the best of times, but at a time where travel is not safe and the disease continues to spread even in the DC area, these type of local and state events are so much more powerful. And so we're glad that they're happening, and we're glad that there's going to be a nationwide protest on a single day where we can try to bring as much attention as we can. This is not a FAM event, but we are so pleased that it's happening. We just want to bring attention to it. And before we talk about the event on August 22nd, the National Day of Protest, first I want to talk to a couple people who either were in federal prison recently or had loved ones in prison, and what it has been like over these last few months dealing with this situation and how bad it is. So I'm going to start with Cynthia Solis, who's had a couple of loved ones in prison. And let me also just mention Chad Marks, who a lot of people, if you follow FAM, will know his name. Chad had a ridiculously excessive sentence for crimes he committed a long time ago. And he spent that time not only bettering himself, but also helping others try to get out and learning their rights. And the culmination of that effort was him finally getting released not that long ago through a compassionate release motion. And so we're very grateful to have him here too, to share his experience, because unfortunately he has a lot of experience. So that we'll learn from that. But Cynthia, I want to start with you. As you know from the FAM Facebook group and from talking to others, this is a time of incredible anxiety for family members. I want to ask, what's been your experience? Maybe tell us a little bit about the loved ones that you have had in prison or have in prison now, and what has that been like during this time? And I'll remind you to unmute. Oh, good, you're unmuted.
It has been extremely scary not knowing how it is going to affect each one of them. My uncle, he's our only living family member from my dad's side of the family, and they had given him a release date, and then they changed it and said that he was not going to be released. And that was at the beginning of the pandemic, and at that time they did not have any masks or soap or toilet paper. They had already gone 3 weeks before having anything that they needed to even protect themselves from this. So and he has heart problems, he's got diabetes, and we definitely thought that it was going to be a death sentence for him. And we started going out there to FMC Fort Worth and started protesting, and we started sending letters into the warden, just staying on them, and we started becoming a nuisance to them. Actually, we were going there every day.
I mean, I know a lot of people, we've encouraged people to write. People think if FAM writes a letter that everything's going to get better, and I wish we had that power. We don't. All we can do is, make it easier for family members to contact and organize them into the loudest possible voice,
Right.
or bring things to the attention of members of Congress. But I hear from a lot of people that, they write or they call and they get blown off by the warden or the administration. Is that your experience?
It was our experience at the beginning, but we just continued staying on them, and we're really persistent. And they told us to call back in a few days. We called back the following day. We just continued on, and really, we would go out there with our bullhorn and start screaming out the warden's name, and we wanted answers. And we were screaming out the counselors' names, and we wanted them to start moving their feet, because really, when they went on lockdown, so did the employees. They didn't want to give us. They were just as scared as the inmates were, but of course they had protection, and so we just were persistent, and we were able to actually watch a few people walk out of there, which was a really, really rewarding thing to actually watch. But they were threatening the inmates, including my uncle, that if they spoke with us or spoke to any kind of news media, that they were going to bring them back in.
Yeah, I want to ask you that. I mean, did you have fears of retaliation? Because we hear about that a lot too. And it's hard to give anybody advice on that, because it's easy to say, speak out, because it's not my loved one who's in there. So people have to make their own sort of calculation there. How did you feel about that?
At first there was fear, but then it was just overwhelming of the everything that they were going through in there. Just kind of put that fear aside for me, and I just went up there, and they were even threatening to take my phone away. And so I just I knew that they were just blowing smoke and they couldn't do anything to me. So and there was no fear of retaliation, because my husband was not at that facility. So I knew that there was no other person besides my uncle that was going to be coming out of there. And
Yeah.
so I just went full force. And then whenever they called the cops on us, then I knew they really didn't have that much power.
Good for you. Chad, I want to talk to you. One, welcome home. And two, thanks for all your advocacy from the inside. A lot of people learned a lot about what was going on inside prison and about the bad laws and policies, because you were not quiet. And I want to ask you about conditions, but first let me ask you about that. I mean, as somebody who was advocating while you were inside, did you worry, and did you have consequences, retaliation because of that?
It depended on what prison I was at. There were prisons where there was retaliation, where they would be mad and say, "Oh, you think you're a lawyer? You're not a lawyer. You're a jailhouse lawyer." But I just kept winning cases. It was important to me. And you know from experience, when you win cases, man, you feel good when you send people home from prison. And you see, I always go back to the Alice Johnson thing, when you seen her run out of there. So I didn't really worry about consequences. I had a 40-year sentence at the time. So, they did everything they could do to me when they gave me a 40-year sentence. So I wasn't worried about consequences. I was worried about getting people out of prison that deserved to get out.
Yeah,
So
and just so people know, you're one of the 924C cases that we hear so much about, where your charges were stacked, and so you got this excessive sentence, I assume because you went to trial.
Yeah, trial penalty.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. So you were there, how long were you in before you just recently got out?
17 years, 5 months. I think it was 21 days.
Something like that.
Something like that.
You were at different facilities. How do you compare conditions inside right now to what you saw over the course of your time there?
I ended up making it to a low security prison. And I have to say, hands down, that was one of the worst prisons I've ever been in. Wow. You would think a low security prison that it would get better. But I started out in a penitentiary, USP, Big Sandy, was in Pollock. They were dangerous places. But as far as living conditions, I have to say that the Federal Medical Center, Lexington, and I'm not saying this out of bitterness, it had to be the worst place that I've ever been. Filthy, dirty. The administration didn't care about anything. Showers were broken. There were 6-7 foot holes in the ceiling. It was ridiculous. You'd be shocked. You'd be appalled if you seen what it looked like inside.
All right, so what people say on the outside. We hear this all the time. Don't do the crime if you can't do the time. And what did you expect, a hotel? And how do you explain to people that it's the punishment is being away from your family and your community, that you don't need a torture aspect to it. And so what's the difference between sort of petty complaints about, oh, the food isn't good versus this is torture, this is inhumane, especially like when COVID hit?
Well, the punishment comes from the court, and unfortunately, there's another punishment when you get to prison. And I can understand people in the public, to say certain things that, you don't deserve to live in a hotel and things like that. But since April 1st, I know at FMC Lexington, they've been eating bologna and cheese sandwiches every single night. And the cheese, it's not really cheese. It doesn't melt. You get a bologna and cheese sandwiches. You get a little pack of Kool-Aid and a 25-cent bag of chips. And some people don't have money. Some people don't have family members. So they are struggling. I think that, punishment is punishment, but there should be some human decency. You shouldn't have people, with an 8-foot hole in the ceiling above their bed. There shouldn't be drywall falling on your mattress. You shouldn't have staff, doing things to you, because those things happen, just doing things just to be wicked and nasty. So, I mean, the punishment comes from the court. You shouldn't go to prison and suffer and be tortured. And some people think torture is just physical, but there's different tortures in there. So
let me ask you about this, both of you. I don't know how I wouldn't have got through even the short time I did in prison if my kids didn't come to see me and I didn't get to hug them once in a while. I mean, I talked to them every day, but I had to hold them. I had to touch them. I mean, we're just social beings. We need physical touch. And I don't think people realize that, they've been in lockdown for a while. And even if we can get more movement within the prison, we don't know when there's going to be visitation. Can you talk about what that means as a family member and as somebody inside? What the foreseeable, if this goes on for months and months, what that's like. What the feeling is, Cynthia.
You want Cynthia to speak first?
Well, either one. It doesn't matter to me. Go ahead.
Well, my husband and our family, we haven't seen him for 3 years. And right before the pandemic, we were approved to come in and visit. And so now it's going to be longer that we haven't seen him. So it's really, really hard on him, as of course it is on me and my children and our children. I don't know when it is going to be the next time that we do get to see him, but it's really taken a toll on our family.
And how have you kept in touch? I mean, here's the problem too, and I don't blame the BOP for this, actually. I blame them for a lot of things, but, Congress said made free phone minutes and it approved to 500, but people aren't out of their cells long enough to utilize it. And if everybody, there's not even enough phones that if everybody used their full time. So, but what kind of communication are you getting?
We are able to text message, but that's whenever they're not on lockdown, of course. And now at his facility, they're doing way longer lockdowns, and he's only able to get out once a day. And of course, he has to pick from eating, showering, right, and getting his things ready to go back in. And so we probably get to talk for 5 minutes.
Yeah. Chad, how was it for you?
Well, I want to comment because I think the public should know exactly what's going on in there. The CARES Act allocated 500 free telephone minutes for prisoners to use the phone because there were no more visits. But that's not what's happening at FMC Lexington and a bunch of other prisons, because I know a bunch of guys in other prisons. What they're doing now is you're allowed 4 phone calls, 4 15-minute, I think 4 10-minute phone calls at FMC Lexington. But in the beginning, they were letting us out 1 floor at a time. We had 300 people in my unit. So what they would do is they would give us 90 minutes, but they would let the whole floor out. So it would be 130 people with 90 minutes. If everybody used the phone for 1 minute, you'd still have 40 people, 50 people that didn't get to use the phone.
Yeah. So
they're telling the public that, well, there's no visits, but we're doing these 500 minutes, and that wasn't happening. I mean, you can obviously see the pain in Cynthia, speaking about her husband and the separation. I mean, I was far away from home. I was far away for a long time. So the visits didn't affect me, but I mean, people like her, and she has small children. I mean, those things are important, as you said. So I think some prisons have these video visits. I think it's mostly the women, but if you look around at most of the state prisons, they have these video visits now, but the federal prison system doesn't have them. I mean, they have them at the camps, but for the men, they don't. And I mean, this is the perfect time to say, hey, let's implement this everywhere so that people can see their family.
Yeah.
It's important. It's
Yeah.
important.
Well, let me ask you this, the chat. I'm with you, and I do think the best of intentions were to get people more phone minutes in lieu of actual visits because of the shutdown. But how do you do that if you're also thinking, I've got to keep these people quarantined? So like, is it just a lack of creativity on the part of the staff of like not letting people out in waves? Or how could you do that without, or is this stupid to even be talking about because you're on top of each other anyway? And so the idea of trying to separate people is not working anyway.
No, I mean, I had spoke to the warden there, Warden Quintana, directly, and he told me, look, that's just what they say on the news. He said, there is no such thing as social distancing.
Yeah.
But I mean, the administration failed because you could do social distancing. What you can do at the low security prison I was at was you could put an officer at each floor with a desk, because they had officers sitting in rooms that were just sitting around because there was no work to be done. So if you put an officer on every floor and you did some social distancing and you just let just this A range out, B range, C, D, and E, and you let them out for 2 hours, then everyone would have an opportunity to use the phone. Everyone would have an opportunity to use the computer, and you would be able to do social distancing. And what we did with our people on my floor is we made a list, because there were some fights over what was going on, actual physical confrontations. So what we did was we made a list, and we had people, I mean, you're probably familiar, we had some people that were shot callers and people that, you know, just organized everything, and it ended up working out. Everybody was happy. And we did social distance. My unit was one of the only units in Lexington that didn't have the virus. We didn't get infected in our unit, but that's because we worked together. We didn't need the staff or the administration. We took it upon ourselves to act and do what was right for and best for all of us.
Let me ask you guys this. I sort of can't believe that we still hear reports over and over about staff not wearing masks. And I mean, have you heard that or saw it?
Not that I heard it, I saw it. But one of the things that really disturbed me was the medical department would come and hand us masks without gloves on. So they're touching the mask and handing it to us. In the beginning, we couldn't wear masks. I had put a t-shirt around my face anyway. And I was threatened that I'd be rolled up if I didn't take the t-shirt off. So I just stopped coming down and getting the meals and ate whatever I had in my locker, because I wasn't going to walk around people without a mask. I know right now I'm in the process of helping a female at Coleman, Adrienne Miller, and they have her in a quarantine unit with people that are sick and people that don't have it, and they're actually mixed in. I'm doing her compassionate release right now, and I think it's outrageous. And we've seen on the news, women at Coleman, you started with 8 cases and now they're over 100 within 2 weeks. It's because of that right there. And the staff, some of the staff take it as a joke, and they think that, oh, well, it's just a hoax. Well, when we got, you know, a whole bunch of people dying, we got over 100 federal prisoners dying, it's not a joke anymore. It wasn't a joke with the first life that was lost. So yeah, a lot of them don't take it serious.
Cynthia, is that what you're hearing?
My husband, actually, they haven't had a mask in 2 months. And yesterday they got threatened that if anybody came out of their cells without a mask or was not wearing their masks properly, that they were all going into lockdown, complete lockdown. So they wouldn't be able to come out for that 1 hour that they are being able to come out. But they haven't gotten a mask in 2 months. And the masks they do have don't even fit them, he says.
We're getting a couple comments, and what I want to ask, Chad, when you're inside, what do you want supporters on the outside to do to help? And what can families do? I mean, you know, to call attention to it.
Well, I mean, when you ask me a question like that, you know, I look at it in the bigger picture. I mean, we got an upcoming election. We have elderly people in prison that are dying. I think that you know, clemency isn't something that's just like this special thing that we're just going to do for a few select people. I think President Trump could step up right now and he could do something. I think that the people, I mean, this is a government for the people, by the people, right? So I think that we need to demand change. There's power in our voices, you know, together we'll conquer as one will fail. But I think that, you know, on the bigger spectrum, that this is bigger than just COVID-19. I mean, there's things that can be done right now. There's 75, 80-year-old guys in there that, I mean, I don't want to speak bad about the president because I'm thankful for him. I'm thankful for the First Step Act. Had it not been for him, I wouldn't be here right now. Right. So I am thankful for that, but I think that he needs to step up. I think that there's guys in there and women that are 50, 60, 70 years old. Clemency, they got a year left, 2 years left. A 7 or 8 year sentence shouldn't become a death sentence. And I think that we need to.
Yeah.
I think we need to stop talking about, these marijuana offenses, they're misdemeanors, and we're going to fix. Well, there's a bigger picture here.
Yeah.
And the bigger picture is real criminal justice reform. We can't say, hey, stuff like the 924C stacking. What Congress did was they said, hey, we're going to clarify what we always meant, but we're not going to make this retroactive. Right. Well, you clarified that the courts have been misapplying the law for 30 years.
Right.
But you're not going to make it retroactive. We've seen that with the crack epidemic. We've seen that with the crack. It took 8 years to make it retroactive. Yeah. If it's wrong for everybody. So I think that right now in this situation that the president needs to step up. I think that people need to demand, both Joe Biden and President Trump, demand promises. Yeah. Demand real criminal justice reform. We can't,
well, I want to say, if anybody's been following us lately, and you just saw us in the last couple of weeks put out both in Arizona and in Florida, candidate surveys, Chad's exactly right. If you can't change, if the lawmakers won't change the law, you have to change the lawmakers. You have to get people who are going to fix this and not just promise things. I want to say too that I agree that President Trump signed the First Step Act, but I will tell you, and you know this from working on the first step, from the compassionate release motions, you still have the Justice Department opposing a lot of motions for people who don't need to be in prison any longer. And so, it's just one of those things where in one hand, they're granting more home confinement placements, but then they're still fighting compassionate release for people who pose no threat to public safety. And so they already have the tool to fix this. Cynthia, what do you, I know we asked this a little bit before, but Christina asked this from our group. What do you do about retaliation? Have you seen it where you had to contact someone to say, I think, my loved one's being retaliated against, or if you fear that situation, how do you overcome that? Have you had to worry about that?
I was trying to help James Romero McTague. He is 86 years old, and he already qualifies to come home. He was on a life sentence as well, but I was not getting any feedback from his counselor. So I went up there personally to speak to him to see what was going on, because he had already turned in all his paperwork to the regional office and nobody was giving him any feedback. And the counselor came down to speak to me. He said, get off my property. I'm fixing to call the authorities on you. You will be arrested. And so, of course, I left. And then I got a message from Romero McTague, and he said, he begged me to stop because they were going to throw him in the shoe. And he said, please, Cynthia, I'm too old to be in the shoe. I don't want to be in there. I appreciate everything that you have done. Thank you. Hopefully they'll be contacting me soon. But really, he runs their education department down there. And he was already cleared to come home, but they won't let him go. The warden won't release him.
Hey, can I interrupt for 1 second?
Sure.
Cynthia, I work at Freedom Fighters, but I'll do that for free. You send me the information. I'll write his compassionate release motion this weekend. I'll put everything off to the side and I will do that for you.
Thank you so much.
If you got cases like that when people are elderly, just call me.
He's been in there for 30 some years already.
Well, we're going to try to get him out. I'm going to do it. I'm doing it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Call me after this. Yeah, no problem.
Tell me what you guys think about this. We get asked about this all the time about worry about retaliation. I always think you got to make a trade-off. If your loved one is complaining about, there's no air conditioning right now, or there's some mild inconvenience, you got to make a judgment call about whether that's worth it, because if there is retaliation. But there are times where the concerns they're hearing about from inside are so grave. Like they think they're at risk, their health, their life is at risk from either a gang they're being picked on, or something going on from a CEO who's got them under their thumb. At that point, I think you have to just, take the risk that, speaking out is worth it. What's your response? Chad,
I believe that. Oh, go ahead, Chad.
My response is, exactly what I told you earlier. I've been threatened 100 times in there. But I would tell them, hey, I got a 40-year sentence. It don't matter to me. If you put me I would say things like, hey, I'm a political prisoner. You could put me in the hole. It don't matter. But I'm going to do what's right all the time, not just part of the time. So if they would threaten me, but they knew I was pretty good with the law. So threatening me was like, okay, threaten me. But we're going to court. So,
Well, maybe the case that you are different because with that sentence, because I think with people with a shorter sentence, they're scared to death they're going to lose their good time. You know, they're going to lose their halfway house time. Cynthia, what do you think?
I believe that's true. And the fact that we continue to allow them to get away with it and not bring things to light, I think that's why they continue doing it. You know, they were threatening my uncle as he was walking away from there, as they were releasing him. They were threatening him to not talk to the media, make sure that your niece puts the phone away because we're going to bring you back over here. And it was a bunch of baloney. But I mean, now that he's on home confinement, sometimes he wishes he was back over there because we get woken up about 3 or 4 times a night in the middle of the night just to see if he's home, and he's got a leg monitor. So why are they calling?
One of our comments, we've got our first Chad for president comment. So there, Chad, feel good about that.
maybe Congress.
Yes.
Start smaller. What about, and we've talked about this a little bit, but the hardest thing is when you feel like you're not getting anywhere, right? So we have said, you can write, you can call. There's now, at the federal level, there's the Office of Inspector General is doing investigations. So there's sort of like a complaint line that you can leave complaints, online for the office to investigate. What if you feel like you are not getting anywhere? I mean, it's like I've called 5 times, no one's calling me back. What do you do if you feel like you're hitting a brick wall and that you're not getting any response?
You want me to answer that?
Actually, I want Cynthia to do it first because I got a different question for you.
Okay.
Well, what I did was I went up there personally.
Oh.
I went up there personally, and of course I got ran off.
Yeah.
But then I got phone calls back
Okay.
because I didn't want me going up there in person.
Squeaky wheel gets the grease thing. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Chad, I want to ask you both that, but I also want to ask you something I mentioned to you earlier, which is with a lot of the family members who reach out to us, we try to give them tools and strategies for, fighting for their loved ones, but I also say you have to live your life on the outside. That, when I was inside, I thought about my family all the time, and that would kill me. And I had a guy who was serving a longer sentence say to me, you do your time, let them do their time outside. Like, they're going to be okay. And even if they're not, you can't do anything about it. So don't make them worry about you. You just do what you have to do. Don't worry so much about them. You did a lot of time. But for families who are, this is in their throat every day, especially since COVID has hit, they're scared to death. And we can feel the anxiety. It's palpable. They feel like every time there's a new BOP report with positive tests, that there's going to be a mass wave of deaths. And it's easy for me to say, don't worry about it. But as somebody who's inside a long time, how do you say to families, yeah, we need you to fight, but also don't worry so much about us because we're taking care of ourselves and stuff.
Well, I feel like this. I mean, with people that are, if your family member's elderly, they have some underlying conditions, then there's reason to be concerned. If you have a family member that's younger, healthier, I don't think that they're necessarily, I mean, I'm not a medical expert, but they're probably going to be okay. It's, sometimes I've seen it myself with people at Coleman, the females there, they panic a lot instantly, and the family members call me and they're nervous. I mean, it's okay to be nervous, but all in all, I think if your family member's healthy, they're probably going to be all right. If they're elderly, then you should be making some phone calls. You should be calling the region. You should be calling central office. I always tell people, call the congressman immediately and complain that way, because usually congressmen and women, they will call the prison. They will do that. And I think the biggest thing is, if they're playing games like Cynthia said, and they're not listening, then you have your family member write a request for compassionate release to the warden. And I'm a firm believer, and I think Sean Hopwood is as well. After 30 days, you go directly to court.
Yes.
We're not doing BP 9s, 10s, and 11s, right, because by then your 80-year-old grandfather could be in danger, and that could take 9 months. So we go directly to court and we make a compelling argument to the judge, based on the COVID-19 dangers of the rehabilitation. I mean, there's all kinds of things that can go into a compassionate release motion. So I think that's exactly what should be done, because now you're getting rid of the BOP.
Yeah. Well, it's the same thing. If you call FAM, that's what we'll always tell you, that every congressional office has a caseworker, and that caseworker will take your information as long as you, waive privacy rights over it. They will call BOP's legislative office, and they will, at least somebody will now be aware that somebody from, some congressional office is calling. Now, sometimes I have seen it where then BOP says, why are you sicking these people on me and all the rest? But, if it's serious enough, who cares? You should do it. Cynthia, I want to ask you, just because there's a topic that comes up a lot too, a little bit, and you were emotional before. How do you take care of yourself and be an advocate? I try to tell people, like, do something every day, but don't spend all day worrying about it, right? Like, get in a shot for your loved one, make a call, send an email, do something. But you also have to have a life on the outside, which is not to say you forget about the person, but you have still loved ones outside that you're caring for, your kids and other family members, and a job. And so how do you compartmentalize enough to be a strong advocate, but live your life?
Actually, I haven't been able to do it too well.
All right, then don't answer this.
I've pretty much dedicated my life into trying to figure out the answer. But now I've learned about self-care, and I've been meditating and trying to get outside with my kids and just trying to keep my mind off of it. But when it's in your face 24/7 on the news and everything, it's hard not to go back and dig for that answer. Maybe somebody didn't hear me, or maybe I could reach some people. And luckily I've actually met a whole bunch of good people that have helped me and led me in a lot of successful things.
I'm going to ask you guys to stay, and we have Janet Lee Walton on the phone. Janet is from Coalition for Prison Reform, and she is the one who is taking the lead in organizing a nationwide prison protest. This is for state and federal. It's not going to always take place at facilities, but it's going to take place hopefully in every state. So Janet, can you hear me?
Hi, yes. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. So Janet, thanks for joining us. Can you talk a little bit about what's planned for August 22nd?
Well, basically, this whole event came about by an actual person behind bars. And he said, this is my dream. Can you make it happen? And so we said, yeah, we will. And just in, 2 months' time, it's just absolutely exploded. But what we're doing is we are having events in every state across the United States, as well as 4 other countries. They're all going to be done the same day, the same time. And we are going to also have a unified ringing of the bells to honor and signify freedom and justice for our incarcerated. And I think that the ringing of the bells has just, that has just caught on, and it's caught so many people's attention. And it's just, the way this thing has grown has been absolutely amazing. It just really has.
Well, we're going to bring up your Facebook event page so people can see that. What is the best way? Because we still have almost a month, or a little over 3 weeks. I think the best thing that we could do is help you get as many people there as possible. So a lot of the people in the group were saying, I've called, I've written, but I want to get involved in more directly. How can they do that?
Of course, they can go to the National Freedom and Justice page. They can also contact me on Facebook, or they can call me at 540-958-1847.
Okay. And Alexis, do we have that page? I don't know. You may be trying to pull it up. We had the Facebook page, but there is a Facebook page, and there's listed there a lot of the events from the different states. So do you have team leads in every state that are sort of organizing it and choosing the venues?
We still have 2 states that we're working on, Maryland being one of them, and Mississippi. The thing with Mississippi is I have a ton of people who want to speak, but I'm having a problem finding someone who will actually organize it. But I did have some messages this morning from some people that I haven't been able to follow up with on yet that are very promising. So I feel sure by the time August 22nd rolls around, we will have at least one event in every state. And we have some states that have as many as 15 or 20 events.
That's amazing. And what about people worried about COVID? How are these events coming off with that?
We're suggesting that everyone follow their state's, recommended guidelines. We can still do the actual feet on the ground protest at a 6-foot distance, wear a mask. In the states that we have not been able to obtain permits for, we are actually doing caravan rallies. And so, of course, we don't have to worry about the social distancing or anything like that. We'll be in our vehicles. And then for the countries, the other countries that are involved, we are having Zoom. I have somebody who actually has an account with Zoom, and they've set up this huge, thing with Zoom for each country. And also we'll have one for people who aren't able to attend here in the United States but still want to be involved.
Gotcha. Okay, and thanks, Alexa says she's posted she's pulled up on the screen the National Day for Freedom and Justice Facebook page, so you can see there's a lot of different events. There's flyers for the different events. Let me ask you, Cynthia, you've done protests in Texas
Yeah.
at your loved ones' facilities, and what do you think is the benefit of that versus, you've done all the calls, you've done all the writing. What about being there in person?
It is actually, I think it's really productive for us to do it. At the beginning, I only started off with 3 people, so it wasn't so productive. Can you guys hear me?
Now, yeah, you went out for a second, but you're back.
Okay, so I started off with 3 people only, and then it started growing and growing, and then we get the media involved, and so even I had some feedback from some of the guards, and they're like, keep bringing them, keep coming, and they said the more people, the more impactful it is, and you're actually are making a difference. You might not think you are, but you got the bigger the crowd, the more of an impact you guys are having. They feel threatened by you guys. So
yeah, I have sort of thought, Chad, I'd be interested in your thoughts on this. This is one where this doesn't have to be, staff versus the prisoners, that no one should want this disease spreading. Everyone should have the same interest in keeping safe. What were the people saying, the guards saying where you were, Chad?
There were some staff that were upset too of what was going on with the conditions, because they got families too. They got children to go home to, and wives and husbands. So some of them were unhappy with the administration. I mean, at least in FMC Lexington in Kentucky. And the governor spoke about how the administration wouldn't work with them, where they were willing to test everybody and come in and help. And the administration just rebuked them. And the reason why, and the public should know the reason why, and this is why, because if they tested the staff and they tested positive, they couldn't come to work. But as long as they didn't test the staff, then they could still come in. You wouldn't know that they had COVID-19. And that's how they were operating. And a lot of staff, and I say that to say this, a lot of staff were upset about that. Some staff were going and getting their own test, because at the end of the day, their family was more important than what the administration had to say. So there were some staff members, and I give credit where credit's due, right, that were upset about the conditions, what was going on, and how the administration was handling. And you've seen that in Pollock. I mean, there was an article in the Washington Examiner, I think it was, the magazine, where the staff were like, this is outrageous. And the warden ended up leaving there. I don't know where he went, but he was not the warden there anymore down there in Pollock.
Yeah. I've seen some of
Oakdale, I stand corrected, Oakdale.
Yeah. I've seen some of the officers unions join in the lawsuits against the facilities because of that concern. On the other hand, I think there's been call outs and things that have left the facilities shorthanded, that have made conditions even worse though for the people inside. Janet, I don't know if Janet's, Janet, are you still on?
Yes.
Oh, what else do people need to know about the event? And, we showed the Facebook page. What else do you want people to know about the event?
Well, I want people to know that this is our chance to really make a difference, I think, in the lives of our loved ones. You know, if one person can have prayer taken out of school, 200, 300, 400,000 of us, imagine what we can do. We can draw the attention needed to force changes and to make things better for the ones that are behind the bars. And we're also, you know, we're pushing for clemencies. We're pushing for compassionate releases. Decarceration right now is at an all-time high of, you know, importance, especially with this pandemic that's going on.
Yeah, no doubt. Beverly Brooks was going to join us. Beverly, are you on? Oh, she might not have been able to do it, or she might be muted. Yeah, that's a good point that you make, Janet, is, you know, I think one thing that COVID has done is made clear that we have a lot of people in prison who don't necessarily need to be there. And we have thought that before this, and now it's really been exposed, especially in compassion release. You know, those of us who were fighting for compassion release before this thought there was no public safety benefit to having a bunch of sick and elderly people in prison who cost a lot of money and were low risk. And now you have a disease in the prisons that's targeting them. So it's just this weird situation where everybody should be working together to get those people out, and it benefits everybody because it creates more space in these facilities. Chad, we're getting close towards the end. What else do you think we should know?
I just think that, you know, like I said earlier, that, you know, the punishment comes from the core. And I don't think 5, 6, 7, 8 year sentences should be death sentences. I think that, you know, like I spoke earlier about criminal justice reform, we need real criminal justice reform. We need people to hold their elected officials, you know, make them accountable. Let's not just, you know, sound bites. We know what happened with the 1994 crime bill. We know what happened with President Trump, what he's done, and we need more. We need a lot more. And I'm going to say this, you know, there's a Democratic debate and Cory Booker got on stage and he said, you know, I'm challenging every person up here, if you're elected president, to grant clemency to the people, that the First Step Act should have helped, but the laws weren't retroactive. So I think that, and I think that we should be pressing President Trump for clemency. Even if, I mean, I think there's plenty of people, but at least the elderly people with underlying conditions. Let's not let them die in prison. And then, you know, we can worry about the other guys that are serving life sentences for nonviolent drug offenses. And, you know, I hate to say it this way, but right now, let's get the elderly people out of prison so they don't die there. They don't deserve to die there. I've seen it. I was at a medical center. It was disgusting what was going on. It was absolutely horrible.
Just to follow up on that, we've done events with Florida Rights Restoration Coalition. I mean, not only the presidential race, because a lot of your policy is dictated by your sheriff, by your state lawmakers, your state reps, your state senators. Then you have your Congress people, both in the House and the Senate. Then you have the White House. In a lot of the places, states that you're in, your district attorneys are elected. Some judges are elected. So if you don't know, you know, make sure that you're asking and you do your homework, do your due diligence. All of these people have an influence on what your criminal justice policy is going to be and their charging decisions. And, you know, whether they're going to seek trial penalties, if you exercise your right to trial, are they going to add more charges? Ask them that. Is that their policy? Or are they going to refuse to do that? Prosecutors could unilaterally say, we won't pursue that policy. Ask your lawmakers, everybody, are you going to vote for mandatory sentences? Do you support mandatory sentences or getting rid of them? As Chad said, are you good when you pass reforms? Are you going to make those retroactive? It took 8 years to get the crack changes retroactive. It's going to be hard for 924C and the other ones that were made as part of the First Step Act. You know, that's going to be difficult. But you got to get people to commit to this. And the way we always say it is, you know, I care about criminal justice and I vote. That's what they need to know. What they think is you're not going to vote on this issue. They think you have other concerns. You don't really care about this one. But the problem is now we know that 1 in every 2 adults has had a family member who's been in jail or in prison. And if that, you know, army unites and says this is a priority, then you have power. Cynthia, how do you get informed? How do you, I mean, you probably didn't think about these issues much before it affected your family. At least that's how I was, right? I mean, until it hits you, it seems like it's somebody else's problem.
Right. You never know what's going on in our own backyards. You hear of this happening in foreign countries and it's happening in our own backyards. And the craziest thing about it is there's so many Americans that are extremely unaware of this. Like I did Uber and Lyft for some time, and 90% of the people that I spoke to about this, they thought I was lying. They thought, that is not true. What did your husband really do? I know he didn't just take his case to trial. Like, who did he murder? You know, and it's so sad because everyone should be educated about this and know what's going on here in the United States. People are dying to get across over here to come to the land of the free, home of the brave, you know, and it's so not like that.
Beverly, were you able to join?
Hello.
Oh, hey, Beverly. Thanks for joining
Hi.
us. This is Kevin Ray with FAM. Do you want to mention anything about the upcoming August 22nd nationwide protest?
You know, I would just like to say I'm so excited about it because for about 18 years I've been an advocator, and I've seen so much going into the system. I thank Janet and whoever's assisting her for this great day because we are planning in Florida to do it. I have 2 sons that's in prison. I have a brother in prison, and one of my sons, he is not guilty of the crime he was accused of, and even the victim said it was not my son, and he has went through abuse, and many more in there has been abused through the system. I was listening at you all, although I could not, get in on the meeting, but I was listening. And as I was listening to the one that was saying about he had been in there and the abuse, and I know that's going on. We are fighting corruption. We are fighting abuse. I mean, we're trying to get even a class action lawsuit. We got inmates in there, not only just being physical abuse, they have been sexual, where metal objects have been inserted into their rectums. They have been beaten. I have guys that I advocate for. I have one where he had 9 ribs broken. I have one now that's legally blind. And I thank God for this move because even like with the coronavirus that's going on, my son now has coronavirus. They're in the institution. Some others have had it. So on that day, I've been asking people, I've been putting it out there. We want to come, we want to stand together, and I even have went to Tallahassee myself several times on behalf of the inmates. And like I say, we vote you in, and if you are not going to do the job that we vote you in to do, it's no problem with me, telling people, hey, vote them out. Let's get somebody in there that's going to stand and that's interested in prison reform. Because even I'm with Covenant Fellowship of Churches International, and our slogan, as we say, we are reforming to transform from change, CHAINS, to change, CHANGE. So we are remembering them that's in prison, those that's being mistreated, because there's so many in there that's not guilty of a crime, and then there are those in there that the years they are given, they do not deserve. So we're also fighting mandatory sentencing. And as I was reading, it has been researched that 20 years should be life unless there's a person that cannot deal with society, a serial killer or something like that. There should be a cap on mandatory sentencing.
Yeah, no, it's well said. I want to say that COVID is one national force that we have that should prompt us to believe that this system is out of control right now. The other one is the racial reckoning that's going on in this country. I say this as a white person who was in prison for a short period of time, and our other former prisoner here is white as well. But I will say we were the minority of the people who were in prison. And it's not that whites aren't in prison, but as Cynthia, we were saying, we may learn about this problem later than others because some communities get hit harder by it. That the idea of being arrested, being charged, going to prison or going to jail is more a daily occurrence and a threat for some communities than others. So I was ignorant of the problem until it hit me. And a lot of my friends were ignorant of it until it hit me, because they didn't grow up and see this sort of mass incarceration firsthand that other communities were seeing first. And so while it's, taking down statues and renaming things is all positive and can be helpful to our country to sort of have this reckoning, if we do not use this moment to make changes where we have seen some incredible inequities, that will be a missed opportunity. So
Yes.
I just want to say this because we're getting close to the end. So usually at this time, I ask everybody for some closing comments, and we got 4, so I'm gonna do around the horn. I'm gonna start with you, Cynthia. And thank you for joining us and for all that you do.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I don't really have any closing, anything for the closing to say that would
Okay.
lead up to a bigger conversation.
Okay.
Thank you for having me. And
Are you involved on the 22nd? Are you going to be out there?
I'm going to be involved on the 22nd, but I'm actually going to be doing every weekend. I'm going to be doing every weekend at Carswell here.
Wow.
Starting Saturday. Saturday I start doing Carswell and FMC Fort Worth every weekend again, because it's getting really bad again at FMC Fort Worth.
Yeah.
But Carswell, of course, is one of the highest COVID infected facilities. But I'm just wondering whenever the next round is coming, because you're only protected for 2 weeks before you can get COVID again.
Yeah. I should ask, this is my new line I ask everybody. Are you on Twitter?
I am.
Okay. Well, make sure that when you're doing these protests, you tag us and you put this out so that we can retweet and amplify it so that we can help get as many people there as possible, because I think it's really important.
Awesome. Okay, I'll do that. Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, Chad, what do you have to say? And thank you again. Thanks for joining us, taking time. And again, thanks for all that you did while you were in, which you did not look inward and be selfish about it. You were helping others. And now you've already come out. And I know you're helping others now. I hope you take a little time for yourself and enjoy some freedom.
Yeah, well, we ain't got time for that right now, but hopefully it'll come. I want to thank FAM. I thank you for all that you do, not just this interview. I thank Debbie Campbell, wonderful person, Alexis. What I want to say in closing is that, together we can conquer as one will fail. There's people like Sunita Dill down at Coleman, caught COVID-19. She needs to get out of prison. There's Adrienne Miller, COVID-19. I believe she may have been infected. These people deserve a chance to get out. James Romans, 50 years old and at FMC Lexington with over 300 cases, sentenced to life for a marijuana offense. I hope that someone from President Trump's administration is watching this. Those are 3 people that should get out on clemency immediately. They're up there in age. They need to get out, man. We need to work together. We need to demand real change, real criminal justice reform. Yeah. And anything that I can do to help anyone, I'm more than willing. As far as everything that's going on the 22nd, I'm a little restrained right now because of the parole situation. Yeah. And because obviously everyone knows they are trying to put me back in prison. But anything that I can or will do, I will. I don't have any problem. I love doing what I do, man. And there's joy in seeing people like Alice Johnson run into the arms of her family. There's thousands of Alice Johnsons that deserve to get out of prison. So again, I thank you. I thank Janet and Cynthia. Thank you for all that you do. God bless everybody.
Well said. Beverly?
Yes, I would just like to say that I'm looking forward to August the 22nd, and I thank Janet again. And I would just also like to say that at the rally, we would be in East Palatka, Florida. And at the rally, we do have 2 of our former guys, the inmates, and that we advocated for. They will be there, and they would be there to tell their story of the treatment that, the abuse, because they went through physical and sexual abuse. And I would just like to say, too, if you know anyone that has loved ones in Santa Rosa, please tell them to keep check, because that's where a lot of our abuses are coming from. So on that day, August the 22nd, 2020, we plan to rally and we plan to ring those bells for freedom and for justice. Thanks again, Kevin, for all you and the rest of all.
Yeah, thank you for what you're doing. Janet?
I just want to mention, I see all these posts on Facebook where people are saying, do you actually know anybody that's had the COVID? This is a hoax, things like that. And I actually was working with a guy on a case. who was in a federal facility in Mississippi, who was very, very healthy, 32 years old. He bench pressed 600 pounds a day, and he has passed away due to COVID. I'm working with somebody now who is actually on his second round of COVID. So the COVID is very real. And I just want to extend an invitation again to everybody. If you have a loved one, a friend, or if you're just a human rights activist, somebody who cares, stand up, join us. Let's do this unified, and let's, really bring the attention that this event has the potential to bring, and we can really force changes.
All right. Well, I want to say thank you, Janet. Thanks for organizing that. And like I said before, this isn't a FAM thing. This was totally grassroots from the bottom up, and we just want to bring attention to it. We do what we can do, but we can't do everything. And you all have the power to be in a lot more places, like the work that Cynthia is doing on the ground. I mean, that's incredible. And I mean, we have 4 individuals, Beverly and Cynthia and Janet and Chad, all of whom have been touched by this system. No one who's running, major organization doing anything except saying, I can do something. And the thing I do, if I can get other people to join me, I can make a difference. And really, that's all we're trying to do, is facilitate those connections and to amplify them. We can send letters, we can meet with members of Congress, we can do that stuff, but they are not going to change unless they think their political future depends on it. I mean, they just aren't. We know the facts and arguments are on our side. What they have to think is that their lives, not their lives, their political lives, though, depend on getting this issue right. And so Chad is right on that point, and we're going to stay vigilant on that. Stay with us through the election, because we're going to be doing more and more things to make people more informed as they go to the polls in November. We got to get informed. You have to know how these people stand. And if you don't know, you have to demand that they tell you. We sent out questionnaires to lawmakers and candidates in Florida and Arizona, and a lot of incumbents didn't even respond. And to me, if you don't respond to groups that are asking you how you stand, that's a strike against you. And so we want people to use this time to demand that, you owe me an answer. So with that, I want to thank everybody for being here, showing the power of individual activists, what you can do. I want to wish everybody luck on August 22nd with the event. We will continue to publicize it. And everybody who has a loved one in prison right now, I know this is a scary time. Please take care of yourselves while you do your advocacy. Be healthy for the family and the loved one that you have around you, and you'll be a better advocate. So thanks for being with us, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.